Hello, Catherine Emery here, home improvement and lifestyle expert and host of the National Hardware Show's The Five Spot, where we talk to industry leaders. I am so excited to have this next guest on, Jeb Buffington. He is the director of pro merchandising currently for the Home Depot, but he has an 11-year history before that as a merchant in all sorts of things, pneumatics, soils and outdoor living. Before that, Staples, Circuit City, Target. This guy knows retail and is such a wealth of knowledge and so much fun to talk to. Jeb, thank you so much for coming on to talk with me.
Man, what a kind intro. You made me sound like I was awesome. You want to do that again?
Bam!
That sounded really cool.
I mean, your experience is legitimate, my friend. You know your stuff.
Well, thanks for saying that. Yeah, I've been in a lot of different product categories. It's funny because I had a whole career in consumer electronics, and then I came to Home Depot, and they promptly put me in engines, and then dirt. So
The
I was one
dirt.
of
I
the
remember
few.
we would try to come up with, but I mean, dirt is so relevant. I mean, it's definitely something at the National Hardware Show. You see it there too, like all that outdoor living, everything out there. But I mean, tell us about your evolution. So what made you go to Home Depot, and then, just the different categories you talked to, and tell us a little bit about being over the pro business, how that's a little bit different or similarities.
Yeah, sure. Like I said, I'd spent most of my career in consumer electronics. I've had everything from um, home theater systems, TVs. We brought the first LCD TVs into Target a long time ago. Brought out the Zune, brought out Blu-ray, DVD, or well, not DVDs, but just Blu-ray. It was fun. It was fun being in consumer electronics. Found myself in a situation where Corporate Express, one of the B2B office supply entities out there, I was with them. They were bought by Staples, and I was given a choice: move to Massachusetts or get severed. I rolled the dice and said, "Sever me, give me that severance payout." And shortly after, a recruiter found me and relocated me to Atlanta, where I joined Home Depot.
Boom.
And my Home Depot career has been a lot of fun. I came over originally as an online merchant, and that was my first exposure to the National Hardware Show. Back
When was
then,
that? What year was
online,
that?
that was 2011.
Oh, that's
But
awesome.
back then, we had almost nothing online.
Right?
We were barely we were not the gigantic .com powerhouse we are today. I mean, back then we
Yeah.
didn't even have was now pricing, right? There was the price and that was it. You had no ability to show discounting or anything. So we did some creative things to show value. And I spent a lot of time at shows like these, looking for assortment, trying to convince folks that they should be on homedepot.com and that we could help make them more relevant. I laugh because we got into some power brands on the power equipment side that we hadn't ever done before. But I also sold the first sea kayak on homedepot.com ever.
I love it. That's awesome.
We loaded above ground pools through Intex back in those days. I mean, it was a little Wild West. Nothing was off limits. We were willing to go away from normal home improvement. They were super fun days, and going to these shows were a lot of fun because you could find suppliers that really wanted a chance. And we had a platform that would give them a real legitimate chance. So
Yeah,
fun
absolutely.
conversations. Yeah.
No, it is. I mean, and you bring up a great point. Like that's what, we're talking like the National Hardware Show with this show, the Five Spot. Beyond that show, we're trying to educate people and just share like great voices with you and experiences like that. But it really is, I mean, how many businesses would you say were launched or started or founded or cultivated on those floors, hand to hand, shaking hands, right? There's just something about that in-person connection that you really can't duplicate, don't you think?
Yeah, I would agree. And as a merchant, I'm an advocate for seeing product wherever you can. I've talked about this quite a bit in our past conversations on my podcast. We've talked about this. A merchant has to be willing to see product wherever it is. And sometimes that's trade shows. Sometimes that's out of the trunk of somebody's car. Sometimes that's in your own building, or in your own office. But as long as you're willing, you'll be able to find some of those nuggets. And you're right. There are entrepreneurs with a lot of skin in the game going to these shows, trying to build a network, make relationships. I'm sure
what's something you found that just like sticks out in your head from over the years that was just like it just blew your mind? You were like, oh my God, this product's amazing. I wish I thought of it.
Well, in the early days, we didn't really have a pool category online. And so launching above ground pools, like the Intex inflatable pools with built-in filters, like cool. Everything comes in one box. That was a lot of fun. We had several garden tool entrepreneurs at these shows where they had attachment type of products where you could buy one handle, one, pretty nice, durable, ergonomic handle with several different attachments. We gave businesses like that a chance. You made connections with suppliers and brands that sometimes weren't willing to sell to you until you had a conversation. Because you got to think, we're Home Depot. You go to these shows sometimes, and some of those entrepreneurs are almost afraid of doing business with you.
Right?
The requirement's too big. Yeah, and the danger of failing or getting invested too heavily, it can be scary and overwhelming. And so it's fun being in a position where you can ease people into that and help them understand they don't have to, be terrified of doing business with us. So.
Oh, I love that. It's so well put too, just helping people, like, hey, we're going to sell stuff together. Let's help each other. So you mentioned your podcast. I have to look. Between the Aisles. Is Between the Aisles still happening?
Yeah, definitely. We record every single week, and it's retail focused, a lot of merchandising type of themes. Last year we launched it when we had you on, and that was remember, we were calling it the Merchant and the Pitch Man.
Yeah.
We rebranded this year, but we're a dozen plus episodes in for this year. So there's plenty of content out there.
Well, and I love the concept of the Merchant and the Pitch Man, because it almost is kind of too like what you would see something at the National Hardware Show, like, right? It's the vendor pitching the product and then the merchant looking to buy it. So, just the fact that you created something else out there beyond what you do in your everyday life to educate people, it's really great. So Between the Aisles, you guys need to go listen to that. It's just a great, great podcast. Okay, so now last year, we know last year was challenging with COVID and everything. How did you pivot, or how did the business pivot, or like professionally, how did you make some changes to kind of deal with that? And of those changes, do you think, will you bring some of those best practices forward with you, kind of coming out of that tough year?
Absolutely. As soon as the shutdown happened, we all went remote working. But the job of finding product and putting together deals that are attractive to our pros that are in the store, that didn't stop. And if you remember a year ago, at least on anybody that was doing interior jobs, they were largely shut down. Like an electrician couldn't get in somebody's home. Nobody knew what we were really dealing with back then. And so one of the mantras that we took on our team, because I shifted from, the core product merchant side of things to the pro merchandising side, one of our mantras became, we've got to work and do our best to put deals forward to help keep our pros in business. We wanted to make sure we had aggressive deals so that they could come to us and not have to shop other sources or feel like they had to go in another store or wait in another line or wait in some long line at, some other, lumber or building material distribution point. We wanted them to be able to get it all in our building, either off the shelf or through special order, and we would arrange all the delivery for them. So it became a very important part of how we operated, and we allowed that to kind of fuel, our own, desire to get up and do a really good job, even if it was, from our basements or from our home offices.
Right. No, but it's
It,
great.
and it changed quite a bit. I mean, in some industries, it accelerated. In others, they almost dried up. Let me just give you an example. I mean, everybody knows lumber and copper is just out of control right
Oh,
now.
crazy.
Um,
Crazy.
Commodity prices are wild. And so the way we approach that business is totally different than the way that we would approach, like fire alarms. A lot of pros out there buying fire alarms. But when people aren't in buildings, that business almost goes away. And so you're having to fight to find other ways that you can go to market with that product, so we can keep the businesses relevant. Yeah.
That's so it's the engine. It's the engine that keeps moving, right? It's crazy. It's crazy. So what advice would you give someone wanting to get into the industry or kind of grow their business, whether they're, a small retailer or like a product entrepreneur? Like, do you ever go? I love in the National Hardware Show that little, like, the entrepreneur hall and like the awards that they give
I
out.
love that
I
section.
know, I know that's your jam,
Yep.
right? So what advice would you give those guys and gals, kind of wanting to get in the business or grow their business?
Yeah, so you're right. I love going through like the award-winning areas where you can kind of
Uh-huh.
walk the circle a little bit and see who you want to go talk to. And that's from a merchant perspective. And so
Yeah.
from a supplier or entrepreneur perspective, you need to find a way to get an award, because you've put
Right.
yourself to the top of the list of who we might want to go talk to. But you're right. Some of those setups in the back, where they're not high production value, they're just people with an idea. I like walking those areas as well, because you find some pretty cool technology, or at least some ideas that people are bringing to market. But I would say if you're in the back, if you're in one of those smaller booths, where you're not taking up a lot of space, but you've got a good idea. There have been a lot of times where I've walked that section where people have been quiet and they're waiting for attendees to talk to them. I would say, don't send someone if they're going to be quiet. You need to have a great
No, good point.
spokesperson like
Yep.
Catherine, right? You need to have a carnival barker out there, to draw
Yeah.
people into the booth so that you can share your ideas. And so that would be one thing. And then the other is, no matter who you are, if you see merchants walking around, if you see anybody, especially from some of the big, retailers, you need to make friends, right? You need to talk to them. I'm one that, I mean, I love walking those shows. I like talking to people. I carry no ego. Honestly, I don't like having the Home Depot badge walking around the show. I would much rather have like a supplier's badge, because then you can be a little more incognito and not get like followed.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Swarmed.
Yeah.
But yeah, as a merchant, I love walking those floors, and I appreciate it when people are trying to bring me in, to share their innovation so that I can see their passion for it. All of that stuff makes a difference. And then I would say,
For sure.
also, once you've made those connections, you got to follow up. I
That
mean,
is
it is
so
on.
well put. So well put. You forget, you get all those cards, and then what do you do with them, right?
I'm
You
the
can sit
same way.
there.
I'll walk out with a stack of cards with all the
Same.
intentions of the world to follow up with these cool ideas. And then they get buried, or you're just so consumed day to day. We've got active pros and customers that we're trying to help. We have stores we're trying to help. We have busy,
Mm-hmm.
intense jobs. But when an entrepreneur, a brand owner, manufacturer continues to reach out to me, if I get a message from you or a text from you, as a merchant, especially at Home Depot, I'm
Yeah.
obligated to respond to you. If I don't
Yeah.
respond to you and my boss finds out, I'm in dead. I'm in deep
Well, but
trouble.
you're so kind though, because some people don't, and that's like one thing is like, it kind of goes with what you're saying, like just be nice. Like, we're all busy, even if the response isn't what people want to hear. And I know you're the same way because we worked together for so long. it just takes you so far, right? Because you never know where that person might end up. And I always say, people will never forget how you made them feel. They might forget your title, they might forget what you did, but they'll never forget that, right? And that's what you're saying. It's like just that authenticity comes true, especially with you and all our interactions together. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think you're right. But also, presenters need to understand that, especially in some of the larger outfits, like we're technically savvy. In a lot
Mm-hmm.
of instances, we've given brands, manufacturers the power and the tools to make decisions or make changes, add product, make changes to content on their own. We're increasingly self-serve.
Yeah.
And so long as you can keep that relationship and be the driver of some of the discussions, first
Mm-hmm.
off, if your product isn't good and you don't have a chance, a good merchant's going to tell you that right away. A bad
Wah, wah.
merchant is going to string you along and not be responsive. Depot, we don't have any of those. They're going to tell you
Yeah.
exactly what they think.
Which I love.
But you have to be the driver of some of those decisions. And if you're not getting responses, um, I mean, again, it's on you to find a way to get the response. It really is.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, this has been amazing. I love it. I love that you utilize the National Hardware Show. I hope we get to see you there in October.
I'll
And
be
for
there.
those that want, yay. So, and for those that want to listen between the aisles, we'll put a link. I'll ask National Hardware
That's
Show to
nice
put a
of you.
link when they post this, because it really is. It's just such a great educational tool. As your publicist for, what was I, your publicist for 11 years. So proud of your trajectory. I just remember coming to your office. All right, we got to make dirt sexy. Let's do it. And we did. So it was always good. So, but just really, Jeb, just really appreciate your time and your spirit and your entrepreneurialism and sharing all your great advice with us today.
Good seeing you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks again for your time.